In this video, we're looking at the TopGreener USB receptacle. Inside the box, you get one USB plug, a wall plate, and instructions. Thanks to the Home Depot Seeds program, we have an opportunity to try out this 2 USB port rated at 3.1 amps, 5 volts, that's shared among the two, and then 2 regular 110, 115 outlets. The advantage that the TopGreener has over the other name brand receptacles that also have USB ports is that it's less expensive. But it's also UL rated. How does this compare to your ordinary decorator receptacle? Well, if we put them side by side, you see that there is a slight size difference. This is wider. We also have a difference on the depth. As you see, it's almost twice as deep, which means if you have an older house, maybe 15, 20 years old, this may or may not fit depending on how the wiring is and how small that box that holds it is. On more modern homes, you shouldn't have an issue, but it's something to consider, especially if you have several lines that come into the box. You know, there's a run that's coming in and then another one going out, or there's a three-way switch involved that's passing through. That's really going to clutter up the box that holds this, and this will just be too thick to be able to push the wire out of the way because there won't be any space for the wiring. So just something to know. Another difference, you may have noticed that this has 2 terminals on one side, 2 terminals on the other, load, neutral, ground. This unit has 1 terminal on each side, 1 for neutral, 1 for the load. So what happens if in your situation you have power coming in here and then it's going on to feed another outlet? Well, what you can do with this, you see there are push-through connections on the back. So you take your load side coming in, the load that's going to the next outlet coming back out, same thing for the neutral. So that's one way of doing it. You don't want to double gang 2 wires on 1 terminal. It's just not wise. So that's one thing to know. Another thing to know is if you see here, there's a bridge, there's a piece of metal that goes across. Now in some households, this will get cut so that one side is powered and maybe always on, and the other side is powered via switch. So you could plug a lamp in here, turn the lamp on and off, but this outlet would always be hot, so you can plug something into it, whereas this one's controlling your lamp. So if that's your situation, then this won't work. This only will have power coming in and going out. You can feed another outlet downstream, but you can't make one outlet always hot and the other one controlled. While this outlet is great for recharging cell phones and tablets, if you have a laptop with a USB connector, this is probably not the device that's going to work for that. It's really meant for small devices that don't consume a lot of power. Here's the outlet that I hope to be replacing, and I say hope because the first thing I'm going to have to do is, of course, turn this circuit off, get this plate off, pull the outlet out, and look to see if I have enough room for this, because as I showed you earlier, this is pretty deep, and if I have wires traveling through and out, then it may not fit. After removing the center screw off the cover, it comes off. You have 2 screws holding the receptacle. Unscrew those. They should stay on, but sometimes they will come off. And then what you do is you pull this out. And now, I haven't tested inside to make sure that there are no live wires, even with the circuit off. Sometimes there could be a live wire in there that's passing through. So I'll be a little cautious. And what I'm looking right now is to see that indeed there are wires coming in and going out. So this outlet actually feeds another outlet. It's just one in a series. And so what I'm checking is, do I have enough room for the thickness of this receptacle? Because if I don't, then I either have to get a bigger box to accommodate this depth, which means I may have to cut this out, or I just give up on the project and just reinstall this back in and use my USB receptacle somewhere else. Before I go putting my non-contact probe in that receptacle, I need to test it on a receptacle that I know is hot. Why? So that I know that this tool is working. Having tested the probe, we now can make sure that there's no power not only coming into that outlet, but just passing through this box. So I am satisfied. Check my neutrals, because just in case the neutrals are hot, and the ground, because you never know how people have wired things. So I'm totally satisfied. Now all I have to do is see the blacks coming here. And there are two wires. They're not screwed in on this terminal. Usually they are. They've been pushed in, and to release on this receptacle, I have to insert a small screwdriver that will allow this wire to come out. And I'll have to do that for the two black wires carrying power and the two neutral wires. And neutral is going to be your silver connection, and load is going to be your brass looking connection. So in this case, because we have a total of 4 wires, we're going to have to go and use the push-ins. And they're labeled here: black, hot, and the white, which is the neutral. Those two will go down here. The 2 loads will go here. I'll have to loosen this screw so that I can open up the clamp and get the wire in there, and then tighten the screw so that with the wire in here, the clamp will compress and hold the wires in place. After releasing the wires from the receptacle, the 2 that were on top, I pushed towards the top of the box. The 2 that were on the bottom, towards the bottom of the box, and I also have the ground. That just helps me to reorientate into the correct place with the new receptacle. Most receptacles have a strip gauge, which is this line here. You would strip the insulation off the wires, so you'd expose this much wire so that you can push it in or wrap it around the terminal. In our case with this one, there's the guide. It's sort of just printed on here. So that's the beginning of the wire, and you'd pull insulation up to that point there. Then you would insert into those holes. Or if you have a single wire, you could wrap it around the terminal, your choice. But before I do any of that, I look at the wires that have already been stripped and to see if they're damaged. And if so, then I would just cut them off, strip off a piece of insulation per the guide on the receptacle, and then use those wires. This doesn't look too bad for me, but sometimes they're really damaged. Or if your wires are looped and you're going in straight in here, then you may just want to cut off the loop so that you have a nice clean piece of wire going in. This is the ground, so it's not an issue since it's going to wrap around on the ground for this receptacle. With the neutral and the ground connected and secured, and they're in solid, all we do is push everything back in there. But don't just push everything back in there. Fold the wires. You see the wires come down from above in this case? So now you push up and get a bend, and then you put another bend. So basically you're going to accordion the wire, and that'll help the wire take up the least amount of space because it's all going to be pushed back, and it has a way of folding up as opposed to just trying to crush it or force it in there. And it may help to put a little pre-bend here if you need that additional loop to get everything back in the wall. With the 2 mounting screws in, the unit should be fairly flush. And now you're ready to put on the cover plate, which is included with the kit. And the nice thing about this cover plate is these screws just stay in place. So all you have to do is align the first one, get that started, and you don't have to worry about screws dropping out and losing them. Be careful with these screws. You don't want to drive them in too much because you just end up cracking the plastic. With everything assembled, I just need to remove some of the clutter that I got out of there because I needed to make room for the receptacle inside the box, and this was taking up some of that space. So now what I'm going to do is turn on the circuit and make sure this works. Here's a tablet at 56% charge. We got our USB cable for it. We plug it in. We come back and we see the lightning bolt, so the unit is charging. Now, know this, that this is not a fast charge. This is always going to be your slow charge. So if you're used to using your fast charge adapter, then you may want to stay with that because this will only slow charge everything, except for laptops. Overall, I like this. It's not a bad product. They're just a couple of gotchas. It's pretty big, so you're going to have to be aware of the fact that it may not fit in your box, and if not, then you either have to put in a bigger box or just move on to a different outlet. The power is shared across the 2 ports. That's pretty common from what I've seen. There's no status indicator light telling you that the unit is powered. And of course, it won't work with laptops. It's just for your small USB powered devices. And of course, you can't split the outlet where one side is powered all the time and the other one is switched. Other than those shortcomings, it does what it says it will do. You have power on the upper and lower, plus you have 2 USB ports that can share the power to run 2 devices, and if one device needs less power than the other one, the circuitry inside takes care of that, prevents devices from being overcharged. So overall, for the price, because this tends to be cheaper than the big name brands, it's not a bad device. Just keep in mind what some of the limitations are, and as long as you work within that, you should be fine. Just wanted to share with you some of the tools that were used in this installation. A contactless probe for testing whether we had live or dead wires, a screwdriver, a Phillips number 2 screwdriver, long nose pliers, a Leatherman little squirt because it has a nice little tip that fits right in there when you're trying to release the wires from the back. You could have also just substituted a screwdriver with a short, thin blade, but this just comes in really handy. And of course, I had a headlamp, or you could use a trouble light. Depending on the needs of your installation, you also may need a wire stripper, diagonal wire cutters, and maybe some electrical tape. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.